General Hospital spoilers reveal that the Dalmatia mission, initially viewed as just another routine operation, has turned into a tragic turning point. What was meant to be a simple reconnaissance assignment has spiraled into failure, and with it comes the devastating confirmation of Vaughn's death. This shocking loss reverberates through everyone who knew him, particularly Jocelyn, whose life is now irrevocably altered by the events. She had hoped for nothing more than a quick, straightforward mission, but the reality of the dangers they faced has hit her with a force she couldn't have anticipated. Vaughn, a man she had begun to trust, is gone, and with his death, the entire nature of her involvement with the WSB has changed. What was once a hopeful path toward making a difference in the world has now become a haunting reminder of the cost of such involvement. The mission's failure isn't just a loss of life. It's the loss of innocence for Jocelyn, who is now forced to confront the brutal truth of the dangerous world she's chosen to be a part of. Vaughn's death forces her to question everything, her place within the WSB, her role in the mission, and her understanding of what it truly means to sacrifice for a greater cause. Though she and Vaughn hadn't known each other long, their bond had deepened through the shared experience of pretending to be newlyweds. This close proximity, combined with the inherent dangers they faced, made their connection inevitable. They relied on each other, and now, with Vaughn's death, Jocelyn is left alone, questioning the future of her own life. Vaughn's sacrifice, though heroic, now stands as a harsh reminder that in this world, no one is truly safe. Jocelyn had already dealt with loss before, losing Oscar and, more recently, Dex, but Vaughn's death hits differently. It makes her realize that the stakes are much higher than she had ever imagined. The consequences of her involvement with the WSB are no longer theoretical, they are painfully real. In addition to the emotional toll, Vaughn's death pushes Jocelyn to face the very real dangers of the life she's now in. It's no longer just about doing the right thing or taking part in noble causes. This world is one where death is an ever-present possibility, where those you trust can be taken from you in an instant. And Vaughn's death is just the beginning. His sacrifice could set off a chain of events that will forever alter Jocelyn's perception of her role in the WSB. She can no longer look at the organization through naive eyes. The cost of being a part of it is too high. For those closest to Vaughn, the impact of his death is just as profound. For Anna, who had voiced her concerns about the dangers of the mission, Vaughn's loss is a bitter confirmation of her worst fears. She will feel the weight of responsibility for sending them into harm's way, even though she had trusted that they could handle the task. For Jack, the failure of the mission is a blow to his authority and judgment. He had been confident in Jocelyn and Vaughn's abilities, but the outcome proves that he, too, underestimated the risks. The repercussions of this failure will undoubtedly ripple through their professional relationships, forcing them to face the reality that in their line of work, success is never guaranteed. But the true depth of the tragedy lies with Jocelyn. As she processes Vaughn's death, she will be forced to confront her own vulnerability in this dangerous world. Her previous losses have prepared her to some extent for the emotional toll that this mission brings, but this one is different. Vaughn's death cuts to the heart of her own desires for a meaningful connection with someone who understands the stakes. Now, with his loss, she faces the harsh truth that the WSB, with its promises of purpose, can take more than it gives. As she reflects on the death of yet another person close to her, Jocelyn's understanding of love, trust, and sacrifice will undergo a dramatic transformation. She will have to confront the painful reality that every relationship she forms in this world carries with it the risk of losing that person. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but one that she must face head-on if she is to continue moving forward. Jocelyn will have to decide whether she can keep fighting for the greater good after experiencing such a personal loss. The pain of losing Vaughn will be a heavy burden, but it will also push her to reevaluate her choices, her motivations, and her future. Will she continue down this path, knowing that more sacrifices could be demanded of her? Or will Vaughn's death force her to reconsider everything, questioning her role in a world where life and death are inextricably linked? Vaughn's death may have ended one chapter, but it has opened up new possibilities and challenges for Jocelyn. She now faces the reality of her life within the WSB with eyes wide open, understanding the true costs of this dangerous path. But this is also a moment of growth for her. She will rise from this tragedy, not broken, but with a newfound sense of purpose. Vaughn's death will not be in vain. It will fuel Jocelyn's determination to navigate this dark world with strength and resilience. As the story unfolds, Jocelyn's journey will be shaped by the memory of Vaughn's sacrifice, and she will carry his spirit with her as she continues to face the challenges ahead. The impact of his death will not fade quickly. It will continue to influence her decisions and actions, pushing her to become stronger and more capable in the dangerous world she has chosen to inhabit. Vaughn's death was not just a casualty of a failed mission. It was the catalyst for Jocelyn's transformation, marking the end of her innocence and the beginning of a new, more dangerous chapter in her life. The loss will stay with her, but it will also empower her to move forward with a clearer understanding of the world she is now a part of. As she faces the future, she will remember Vaughn's sacrifice, using it as a reminder of what is at stake and what she is willing to risk in order to survive. Vaughn's death at the hands of Jocelyn has triggered a monumental shift, one that is reverberating through every corner of her world. The tragic event is no longer just a loss, it is the catalyst for profound change in Jocelyn's character, a change that is both unsettling and transformative. Vaughn, who had once been a partner, a potential ally in this treacherous world she had stepped into, is now a memory. A haunting presence that will forever mark the point at which everything began to unravel. The weight of his death, especially considering the circumstances under which it occurred, has shifted Jocelyn's entire perspective on life, on duty, and on herself. The moment that Vaughn slipped from life into death, Jocelyn was forced to confront a new, terrifying reality. No longer was she just a young woman navigating the dangerous waters of the WSB, she had crossed a line. She had taken a life, and in doing so, she had not only altered the course of the mission but also changed the trajectory of her own life. This act, this horrific necessity, has led her down a path that she cannot easily escape. The shift is not just a passing moment of grief or guilt. It is a fundamental reordering of everything Jocelyn once believed to be true about her role in this world. Vaughn's death, at her hands, symbolizes the end of her innocence. The weight of this action is something that will haunt her every waking moment, shaping her future decisions and her interactions with those around her. This is not a world where morality is clear, where decisions are simple, and Jocelyn has learned this lesson the hardest way possible. She can no longer see the world through the rose-colored lenses of naivete. The reality of the WSB is stark, brutal, and unforgiving, and Vaughn's death stands as the testament to the dangers lurking at every turn. What makes this even more complicated is the strange, lingering obsession that Jocelyn now finds herself consumed by. Vaughn's death has ignited something deep within her, a fixation on the consequences of her actions and the role she plays in a much larger, darker game. This obsession isn't just about guilt or sorrow, it is about control. For the first time, Jocelyn is beginning to realize just how much power she now wields. Her actions, her decisions, have real-world consequences. She can no longer simply follow orders or play the role of the innocent bystander. She is part of this world, and that means she has the ability to shape it. But with that power comes an overwhelming responsibility, one that she is just beginning to comprehend. The more she thinks about it, the more she is consumed by the idea of control. The idea that, for the first time, she has the ability to decide someone's fate, to determine life or death, has sparked something inside her that she cannot easily dismiss. This realization is not only unsettling, it is driving her deeper into a new obsession. Jocelyn is no longer just grappling with the fallout from Vaughn's death, she is wrestling with the idea that she now controls her destiny in a way she never has before. She has become a player in a game where the rules are written by those who are willing to take the most drastic steps. She must now learn how to navigate this new world, where control is the ultimate currency, and those who hesitate are doomed to fail. This obsession with control, over her own life, over the WSB, and over her future, will continue to drive her actions in the coming days, months, and even years. As Jocelyn reflects on what happened and how it has changed her, she begins to question everything. What does it mean to truly control one's life in a world like this? Can she ever trust herself again after what she has done? And what price will she have to pay for taking control? These questions are becoming increasingly central to her journey, and the more she searches for answers, the more she is consumed by the need to understand the power she now wields. This need for understanding, for mastery over her own destiny, is the new obsession that is beginning to define her path. But this obsession with control isn't just about Jocelyn. It is a reflection of a larger theme in the story. Vaughn's death and Jocelyn's role in it serve as a symbol of the larger shifts occurring within the world of the WSB. The organization is driven by power, manipulation, and control, and Jocelyn is slowly learning how to play that game. But with each step, she is losing a part of herself. She is becoming more and more entangled in the web of deceit and violence that defines the world she has entered. The question now is not just whether Jocelyn can maintain her humanity, but whether she can keep her sanity intact in the face of the power she is learning to wield. This shift in Jocelyn's character is monumental. It is not just the loss of Vaughn that has changed her. It is the realization of the control she now possesses, the obsession with wielding it, and the changes that this obsession will bring. The more she thinks about it, the more it consumes her. And the more it consumes her, the more dangerous she becomes, not just to her enemies, but to herself. This new reality, this new obsession with control, is pushing Jocelyn into uncharted territory. She is no longer the girl who entered the WSB with dreams of making a difference. She is becoming someone else, someone who is starting to understand just how much power she can hold over those around her. But with that power comes a cost, one that she will have to pay, sooner or later. And the question remains, can she live with the consequences of the choices she is now making, or will she be consumed by the very obsession she has created? As the story unfolds, Jocelyn's journey becomes more and more intense. The death of Vaughn marks the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one that is defined by the pursuit of control, the obsession with mastering her fate, and the realization that she is now part of a much larger and more dangerous world. It is a world where every decision has a price, and the consequences of those decisions can be far-reaching. As Jocelyn learns to navigate this world, she will find herself pushed to the limits of what she is capable of, both as a person and as a player in a dangerous game. The question is no longer just about survival, it's about control. And in the world of espionage, control is everything. The revelation of Vaughn's death has sent shockwaves through the lives of everyone involved, but it is the shocking confession from Vaughn just before his demise that truly throws everything into chaos. With his last breath, Vaughn reveals a bombshell: he is the son of Jason. This revelation, as dramatic as it is unexpected, flips everything on its head and opens the door to a world of dark secrets, betrayal, and vengeance. For Britt, the woman who has spent so much of her life trying to find her place and navigate the shadows of her own past, this is a revelation that leaves her reeling. The truth about Vaughn's identity is a blow not just to the family she is entangled with, but also to her own sense of reality. She has known for a long time that Jason, despite all the years of effort and struggle, has his own dark history, his own secrets. But the knowledge that Vaughn, the person she had begun to care for, was Jason's son, shakes Britt to her core. It forces her to reckon with not only the immediate dangers that surround her but also the deeper questions of loyalty and identity. She can't help but wonder, what other secrets is Jason hiding? What other dark truths have been buried, and how much is she willing to confront to unravel them? Britt's shock is not just emotional, it is also deeply personal. The knowledge that Vaughn, a man she had become emotionally invested in, was not only a victim of the violent world they inhabited but also connected to Jason in such a profound way, complicates her feelings even further. She had thought of Vaughn as an ally, a fellow soldier in the fight for survival in a world full of danger, but now she must reconcile the fact that his death was tied to the very family she has always struggled to belong to. This realization sends Britt into a spiral of introspection, where she begins to question her own allegiances, motivations, and the consequences of her past actions. As the pieces of the puzzle come together, Britt must decide where her loyalty truly lies, whether she will side with Jason and the family that has always had her back, or whether she will seek revenge for Vaughn's death, a revenge that might tear apart the very relationships that have sustained her. For Jocelyn, the revelation of Vaughn's true parentage adds a layer of complexity to her grief and anger. Vaughn's death was already a hard pill to swallow, but learning that he was Jason's son forces her to reconsider everything about the world she's entered. Jocelyn has always been a woman of strong convictions, someone who wanted to make a difference, but this knowledge of her former partner's bloodline introduces a new, darker layer to the already dangerous world of espionage and intrigue she is now part of. It also complicates her relationship with Jason. As much as she has trusted him in the past, as much as he has been a part of her life, she cannot ignore the fact that Jason's son, someone she had grown close to, has now been taken from her in such a violent and final way. This revelation stirs within Jocelyn a deep sense of injustice, and it ignites a hunger for revenge. She feels an overwhelming need to make those responsible for Vaughn's death pay, but she is torn between her loyalty to Jason and her desire to seek justice for Vaughn's life. Jason, too, is shaken by the truth of Vaughn's confession. He has lived with his own dark past for so long, trying to keep the shadows at bay and protect those he loves from the dangers of the world he inhabits. But now, the weight of his own son's death, coupled with the shock of discovering that Vaughn was his child, forces him to confront the reality of the life he has led. Jason had always kept his family at arm's length, hiding his past and the mistakes he had made along the way. But now, with Vaughn's death and the discovery of his identity, Jason must face the consequences of his choices. He is no longer just a soldier in the shadows, but a father grieving the loss of a child he never had the chance to know. This revelation forces Jason to reckon with his own mortality, the mistakes of his past, and the people he has hurt along the way. It also reignites a burning desire for revenge, not just against those who killed Vaughn, but against the system that has continuously broken him and his family. The revelation of Vaughn's true parentage, combined with his shocking death, forces all three characters, Jocelyn, Britt, and Jason, into a new reality where revenge is not just a distant thought but an immediate need. Vaughn's death has become the catalyst for a series of actions that will reshape their futures. Jocelyn, fueled by grief and anger, wants to see those responsible for Vaughn's death pay. She is ready to fight back against the forces that took him from her, to make them feel the same pain she is now enduring. Britt, grappling with her own sense of identity and loyalty, is torn between the need for justice and the ties she has to Jason's family. She understands the dangers of revenge, but she also knows the price of letting this injustice go unpunished. Jason, caught between the need to protect his family and the drive to avenge the death of his son, is a man torn apart by grief, guilt, and rage. Together, they will be forced to navigate a world where their emotions and desires for revenge may be their most dangerous weapons, but also their greatest vulnerabilities. The road ahead will not be easy for any of them. Vaughn's death has introduced a new obsession within each of them. A need for justice, a hunger for revenge that threatens to consume their every thought. But with this obsession comes the risk of losing themselves, of becoming the very thing they despise. The shadows of their past, the dark truths about their identities, are closing in, and each character will have to decide how far they are willing to go to achieve their goals. Revenge, after all, comes at a cost. And for Jocelyn, Britt, and Jason, the question is not just whether they will be able to avenge Vaughn's death, but whether they can still hold on to who they are once the dust has settled. Brennan and Anna were shaken to their core. The shocking revelation that Vaughn was Jason's son, coupled with the devastating aftermath of his death, had left both of them in a state of disbelief. They had been part of a world where danger was always lurking, but this was something entirely different. The personal connection, the devastating realization that a life had been lost in such a violent and senseless way, had forced them both into a place of intense emotional turmoil. It was no longer just about the mission or the greater cause, it was about them. It was about their own feelings of guilt, responsibility, and the weight of the lives lost in their pursuit of justice. Brennan, who had always prided himself on being calm, collected, and in control, was now overwhelmed by a deep sense of failure. He had been responsible for sending Jocelyn and Vaughn into harm's way, believing it to be a straightforward mission. But the consequences of that decision were now clear, and they were irreversible. He had failed, and Vaughn had paid the ultimate price. Brennan couldn't escape the thought that his mistake had cost someone their life, someone who had been close to him, someone who had trusted him. The weight of that loss was suffocating, and as much as he tried to push it aside, it was clear that this moment would haunt him forever. Anna, too, was struggling to cope with the aftermath. As someone who had been in the intelligence world for so long, she knew better than most the risks of the life they led. She had seen death, betrayal, and loss countless times, but this was different. Vaughn's death was not just another casualty, it was personal. He had been part of the team, part of the operation that she had fought to protect. And now he was gone. The guilt gnawed at her, making her question everything she had done and the choices she had made. Had she done enough to protect those who had been sent into harm's way? Could she have prevented this? The weight of those questions was more than she could bear. As they both sat in the aftermath of the revelation, the need for action became undeniable. Brennan and Anna knew they couldn't just sit and let this tragic loss define them. They needed to act, and they needed to act fast. The world they were involved in was unforgiving, and if they didn't take control now, the consequences could be even more devastating. Their failure to protect Vaughn had ignited something inside them, something they hadn't realized they were capable of, an obsession with vengeance, with ensuring that those responsible for this tragedy would face justice. The desire for retribution quickly took hold of them both, transforming their grief into an unrelenting drive to make things right. The more they thought about the loss of Vaughn, the more they felt the need to take action. To ensure that this kind of loss would not go unanswered. Brennan, once the level-headed operative, was now consumed by a burning need to hunt down those responsible. Anna, too, was no longer the calm strategist she had once been. Her emotions were raw, and she found herself increasingly fixated on the idea of bringing down the people who had taken Vaughn from them. This obsession was no longer about completing a mission or serving the greater good. It had become personal. It was about vengeance, about making the people responsible for Vaughn's death pay for what they had done. And the more they stewed over it, the more the obsession grew. They couldn't let go of the fact that they had failed someone they cared about, and now they needed to make sure that failure didn't extend further. They had to act, and they had to do it swiftly. What started as a shared sense of duty had now transformed into a burning desire for justice. Brennan and Anna were no longer just following orders, they were driven by something darker, something more personal. They had been touched by the loss in a way that had awakened something within them. This was no longer just another mission, it was a quest for retribution. They were consumed by the need to make those responsible for Vaughn's death pay. It was a path that would lead them to make decisions that could change everything. Choices that could lead to more destruction, more loss, or perhaps, for the first time, real justice. The reality of their situation, and the realization of what they were willing to do to make things right, began to settle in. What had begun as a tragic loss had now become an all-consuming obsession. They couldn't stop it, even if they tried. The need for justice, revenge, even, had taken root in their hearts and minds. They could no longer pretend that they were unaffected by the consequences of their actions. They could no longer stay detached from the emotional toll that had been taken on them. For Brennan and Anna, this obsession with revenge was now the driving force that dictated every thought and every action. They couldn't ignore it, couldn't pretend that the loss of Vaughn had simply been another casualty in a long line of many. This was different. This was personal. And as much as they knew that the line between justice and obsession was thin, they also knew that they were too far gone to turn back now.